The day had finally arrived. The day I had been waiting for and carefully planning for weeks our wedding anniversary. I wanted everything to be perfect, every detail just right, so that when my husband, David, walked into the house that evening, he would see how much he still meant to me. The kitchen was filled with the sweet aroma of fresh roses I had ordered earlier that morning, their red petals blooming in a glass vase at the center of the dining table. Candles lined the shelves, ready to be lit. Our favorite bottle of wine chilled in the fridge, and in the oven, the dinner I had prepared slowly roasted, filling the air with warmth and love. I had spent hours running back and forth, checking every corner, making sure the plates were spotless, the glasses shining, and the music playlist filled with the songs that once meant the world to us. My heart fluttered like it used to in the early days of our marriage. I was nervous, but in the best possible way. Tonight was supposed to remind us of who we were, two people in love, choosing each other over and over again. But David was late. I kept glancing at the clock, each tick growing louder, almost mocking me. At first, I brushed it off. He was busy. He always worked long hours, and maybe he was stuck in traffic. Still, something gnawed at me, a restless worry that made me pace around the room, smoothing the wrinkles in the tablecloth, adjusting the roses again and again. Finally, I grabbed my phone and called him, my fingers trembling slightly. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. A cold shiver ran through me, but I shook it off. He'd be here, I told myself. He'd walk in any minute with that tired smile of his, apologizing for being late, and then his eyes would light up at the sight of everything I had done for him. But the minutes turned to an hour, then two. My carefully arranged evening began to blur into unease. And then out of nowhere, I got a message from my sister, Emily. She texted, "Come by the restaurant downtown. There's something you need to see." My stomach dropped. Emily rarely messaged me at all, and when she did, it was never urgent like this. Something about her words made me grip the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my keys and left the house, leaving behind the roses, the candles, the dinner waiting in the oven. The city lights blurred past as I drove, my thoughts racing faster than the car itself. What could possibly be so important? Why now, on my anniversary night? When I pulled up outside the restaurant, I saw the glow of golden lights spilling through the windows, laughter floating out into the street. It seemed so normal, so ordinary. But my chest tightened as I walked in, and then I froze. At the center of the restaurant, in full view of everyone, I saw David, me husband. He wasn't sitting casually with coworkers, nor was he simply eating dinner. No, he was kneeling on one knee in front of Emily, my sister. Time stopped. The small velvet box in his hands glinted under the dim lights as he opened it to reveal a sparkling ring. Emily's face was flushed with delight, her hands covering her mouth as tears streamed down her cheeks, and around them, people clapped, cheered, and celebrated what they thought was a romantic proposal. My heart shattered in my chest, my knees buckled, and I had to grip the edge of a chair to keep myself from collapsing right there in front of them. Every ounce of breath left my lungs, replaced with a piercing ache I couldn't contain. This was supposed to be my night, my marriage, my husband. And yet, he was there, giving the very love and promise that once belonged to me, to my sister. I couldn't even hear the applause anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears, my world tilted, my reality collapsing into pieces that would never fit together again. And in that moment, I knew me life, my marriage, my family, it would never be the same again. I don't even remember how I left that restaurant. My legs carried me out into the cold night air, but my heart stayed behind, crushed beneath the weight of betrayal. The streets blurred as I stumbled back to my car. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, my breaths uneven, shallow. Every second replayed in my mind the way David looked at Emily, the way her eyes sparkled, the sound of people cheering for them as if they were the perfect couple. By the time I reached home, the roses had begun to wilt, the candles unlit, the dinner cold. The table I had so carefully prepared mocked me, a cruel reminder of the love I thought I still had. I collapsed into a chair, burying my face in my hands, and sobbed until my chest ached. The next morning I thought maybe it had been a nightmare. Maybe my imagination had twisted reality into something horrific. But then my phone buzzed with a flood of messages from family members. Why would you embarrass your sister like that? You're being bitter and jealous. Move on. Emily deserves happiness too. My heart sank as I scrolled, each word cutting deeper than the last. Instead of rallying around me, instead of recognizing the betrayal for what it was, my family had turned on me. That afternoon, my parents called. My mother's voice was sharp, full of irritation instead of comfort. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? David and Emily love each other. You need to accept it. Don't cause more drama. I could barely find the words. Mom, he's my husband. Emily is my sister. How could you possibly defend this? But she sighed, as if I was the unreasonable one. You're too emotional. You always were. Don't ruin this for everyone else. Her words hit me harder than David's betrayal. My own mother, the woman who was supposed to protect me, was telling me to stand aside and let my sister take my place. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. In the days that followed, the whispers grew louder. Family dinners were planned without me, gatherings where Emily and David showed up hand in hand, smiling as if nothing was wrong. Whenever I tried to speak up, I was told I was imagining things, that I needed to move on, that my bitterness was poisoning the family. I began to feel like an outsider in my own bloodline, as if I had somehow done something wrong by daring to love, by daring to expect loyalty. The walls of my home seemed to close in on me, every corner haunted by memories of what I thought was a happy marriage. Late one night, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. My eyes were hollow, rimmed with red. My lips trembled as I whispered to myself, "Am I going crazy? Is it really me?" But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't bitter. I was betrayed by my husband, by my sister, and by my own family. And though they wanted me silent, though they wanted me to simply vanish and let their lies flourish, I couldn't. Something inside me, a quiet ember of strength I didn't know I had, began to burn. I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing with certainty. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. The days blurred together after my family's rejection, but the pain didn't dull. Every morning, I woke to an empty bed, the silence of a house once filled with laughter. Every night, I lay awake, replaying every sign I had ignored, every suspicious glance between David and Emily that I had brushed aside, convincing myself it was nothing. Now, I realize it had always been something. One evening, unable to bear the loneliness, I drove past Emily's apartment. I told myself it was just curiosity, but my heart raced with something darker desperation. Lights flickered inside, and I could see shadows moving across the curtains. My chest tightened as I recognized David's silhouette. He was there, in her home, as if he belonged. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, forcing myself not to scream. But then, as I was about to drive away, a sliver of conversation floated through her open window. Emily's voice light, almost giddy. "I can't believe how fast it's happening. What if people find out before we're ready?" And then David's voice, low and soothing. "Don't worry. Soon no one will care. It'll all be about us and the baby." The baby. The word struck me like lightning. My breath hitched, my entire body trembling. I sat frozen, my mind racing. My sister, pregnant, with my husband's child. I drove away in a daze, my vision blurred by tears, my heart pounding in my chest. The betrayal had gone beyond anything I had imagined. This wasn't just an affair, a fling, a mistake. This was a new life created in the shadows of my marriage, a living symbol of their treachery. For days I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, but my despair slowly shifted into something else resolve. I knew I needed proof. I couldn't confront them with only overheard whispers. My family would twist the story, call me paranoid, dismiss me as jealous. I needed something undeniable. So I began to watch, carefully, quietly. Emily's social media became my hunting ground. I noticed subtle changes posts about big life changes, photos where she held her purse close to her stomach, captions about feeling tired but excited. To most, it was nothing, but to me, it was a breadcrumb trail. One afternoon, I followed her discreetly after she left her apartment. She drove to a clinic, glancing around nervously before stepping inside. My stomach churned as I sat parked nearby, hands clammy, waiting. When she finally emerged, she clutched a small white envelope. The moment she was gone, I entered the clinic myself, feigning calm as I asked the receptionist for Emily Carter's paperwork. I expected resistance, But the receptionist, distracted and hurried, handed me a discarded copy of her appointment slip from the counter. And there it was, in bold letters, prenatal consultation. I nearly collapsed right there in the waiting room. My suspicions were confirmed. Emily was pregnant, and David was the father. I clutched the paper to my chest as I left, my pulse thundering in my ears. My hands shook violently, but a strange sense of clarity washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I had more than grief, I had power. When I returned home, I laid the slip on the table, staring at it for hours. My mind replayed the betrayal, the smug faces of my family telling me I was jealous. I whispered to the empty room, "Let's see them deny this." But with proof came an agonizing question. What would I do with it? How could I wield this truth against them? That night, as I lay in bed, the answer began to form. My family wanted to humiliate me, to silence me, to make me disappear. But instead, I would expose them. Not in whispers, not in private. I would do it in the one place they felt untouchably, the next family gathering, where every single one of them would see the truth with their own eyes. The thought filled me with both dread and strength. My heart was still broken, but my spirit was sharpening like a blade. They thought they had destroyed me, but they hadn't realized I was just getting started. The invitation came from my parents, written in their usual polite tone, but carrying the weight of command. Family dinner, everyone expected. It was the first gathering since the disaster of my anniversary, and the idea of walking into a room full of people who had turned their backs on me made my stomach churn. Yet, as I stared at the prenatal slip tucked safely in my purse, I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. I arrived at the house early, heart pounding, palms slick with sweat. Every step toward the door felt heavy, like I was walking into enemy territory. Inside, the familiar smell of roasted chicken and cinnamon rolls filled the air, but instead of comfort, it made me sick. This wasn't home anymore, was the stage for betrayal. Emily was already there, her hand resting casually on David's arm, her smile sweet, practiced, false. My family crowded around them, laughing, asking questions, showering them with the affection they had stripped from me. My mother clasped Emily's hands with a tenderness she hadn't shown me in years. When they noticed me, the room fell silent. Eyes turned, and I could feel the judgment like daggers. My father's jaw tightened. My mother forced a brittle smile, and Emily's lips curled into a smirk, as if daring me to break. "Nice of you to join us," David said coolly, his voice devoid of warmth. "We weren't sure you'd come." I didn't answer. I just sat quietly at the table, the envelope in my purse burning like fire against my side. Every laugh that erupted, every compliment my family gave to Emily, twisted inside me like a knife. I could feel the anger bubbling, but I forced myself to wait. The right moment would come. Dinner dragged on, each bite of food tasteless in my mouth. I watched Emily carefully, her hand slipping over her stomach when she thought no one was looking, her eyes darting toward David with silent meaning. My family remained oblivious, caught up in their own blind adoration. Finally, as dessert was being served, I stood. My hands trembled, but my voice when it came was steady. "I have something to say," I announced, my eyes sweeping the room. A murmur of surprise rippled through the table. My mother frowned. "Can this wait, dear? We're eating." "No," I said firmly, pulling the folded slip of paper from my purse. "This can't wait any longer." Emily shifted uncomfortably, her smile faltering. David's eyes narrowed. "I've listened for weeks," I continued, my voice growing louder, steadier. "I've listened to all of you call me bitter, jealous, crazy. But tonight, I want you to see the truth for yourselves." I dropped the paper onto the table. The words prenatal consultation gleamed in bold print. Gasps filled the room. Forks clattered onto plates. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's eyes widened. "What is this?" my mother whispered, her voice shaking. Emily's face drained of color, and David's mask of calm cracked for the first time. He reached for the paper, but I snatched it back, holding it high like a weapon. "It's proof," I said coldly. "Proof that Emily isn't just stealing my husband, she's carrying his child." The room erupted. My mother turned to Emily in horror. "Is this true?" Emily stammered, her face contorted in panic. I can explain." But David slammed his hand on the table. "Enough!" he barked, but his voice wavered with desperation. "No, David," I said, my eyes locking onto his. "For once, it's not enough. Everyone deserves to see what you've done. To me, to this family." Silence followed, thick and suffocating. My parents looked between us, torn between disbelief and the undeniable evidence before them. My siblings sat frozen, their earlier smugness gone, replaced by shock. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she grabbed David's hand. "We were going to tell them," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Just not like this." The betrayal hung heavy in the air, choking the room of its laughter, its warmth, its lies. For the first time, the spotlight wasn't on me as the bitter, jealous wife. It was on them, the guilty ones, stripped bare of their secrets. And though my heart was shattering inside my chest, I felt a surge of strength. I had turned their stage against them. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. The dining room descended into chaos after my revelation. Voices overlapped, shouts and gasps clashing like thunder. My mother kept shaking her head, as if denial alone could undo the truth that now lay bare on the table. My father sat stiff, staring at David with an expression so cold it chilled the air. My siblings whispered frantically, their smug smiles wiped away, their faces pale with disbelief. Emily clutched David's arm desperately, her voice trembling as she tried to justify the unforgivable. We didn't mean for it to happen this way," she stammered, her eyes darting from face to face. "We fell in love. It wasn't planned. The baby was just stop." My voice cut through her excuses like a blade. I had listened to enough lies, enough twisted justifications. My hands trembled, but the fury in my chest gave me strength. You stole everything from me. My marriage, my trust, and now you expect us to believe this was fate? David finally stood, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. You think you're so righteous, he spat at me, his voice breaking under the weight of exposure. But our marriage was already broken. You never made me happy. Emily understands me in ways you never could. The words hit me like a slap, but I refused to flinch. My mother gasped loudly. My siblings exchanged horrified glances, and Emily's hand slid protectively over her stomach, as though that would shield her from the shame now consuming her. You betrayed me, I said quietly, my voice low but fierce. And you didn't just betray me, you betrayed every single person in this family who believed in you, who trusted you. You humiliated me in front of everyone on our anniversary, and you thought you could walk away unscathed. David tried to hold his ground, but sweat beaded at his temples. His confidence wavered. He looked toward his parents-in-law, seeking sympathy, but found only hardened faces staring back. The room had shifted. The whispers of support that once backed Emily and David had turned into silence, heavy with judgment. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice breaking as she cried out, "We love each other. Isn't that what matters? Why can't you all just accept it?" My father's fist slammed down on the table, startling everyone. His voice thundered through the room, colder than I had ever heard it. Love built on lies is no love at all. The words silenced Emily. She looked around, desperate for someone to defend her, but every pair of eyes burned with disappointment, disgust, or disbelief. The moment hung there raw, unflinching. David opened his mouth, but no words came. The reality of what he had done, the destruction he had caused, finally pressed down on him. He tried to speak again, his voice cracking. I never meant for it to end like this. I stood tall, my tears gone, my pain transforming into something hard to resolve. But it has ended, David. You ended it the moment you chose her. And now everyone knows who you truly are. Gasps followed, as if the weight of my words had driven the final nail into the coffin of our marriage. Emily buried her face in her hands, sobbing. David's shoulders slumped, his head bowed, his pride stripped away. In that moment, I realized I wasn't the broken one anymore. I wasn't the jealous wife they had painted me to be. I was the only one standing strong while they crumbled under the truth. The climax had arrived not just of their betrayal, but of my awakening. The silence that followed wasn't mine to fill anymore. It was theirs to carry, to choke on, to suffer. The room felt suffocating with silence, broken only by Emily's muffled sobs and the shallow sound of David's breathing. For a moment, I simply stood there, taking in the wreckage of what had once been my life. I looked around the dining table, the very heart of our family, where we once gathered for birthdays, holidays, and quiet evenings. Now, it had become the stage for the ultimate betrayal. My father's eyes softened as he looked at me, the steel of his anger giving way to something else pride. My mother, still visibly shaken, reached out a trembling hand as if to touch mine, but stopped midway, uncertain, ashamed that she hadn't believed me sooner. I let my gaze rest on them, then on David and Emily, slumped and broken in their chairs. Finally, I drew in a steady breath, my voice calm, but charged with a strength I hadn't felt in years. I refuse to be defined by your betrayal, I said, my eyes fixed on David. You wanted to break me, but all you've done is free me. I will not spend another day chained to a man who lacks loyalty, nor will I waste another breath on a sister who covets what she cannot earn for herself. Gasps rippled around the room. Emily lifted her head, her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her lips trembling. Please, don't do this. Don't leave us like this. We can make it right. But I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. No, Emily, you made your choice the moment you stepped into his arms. You stole my marriage, and with it, you destroyed our family. There's no undoing that. David tried to rise from his chair, desperation creeping into his eyes as he reached for me. Wait, don't walk away. You can't just leave me like this. I stepped back, out of his reach, my voice unwavering. I can, and I will. The power in those words reverberated through me. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt in control, no longer the victim, but the author of my own story. I turned to my family, my expression firm. You believed lies over me once, but today the truth has spoken for itself. Whether you stand with me or not, I know who I am. I know what I deserve, and I will no longer settle for anything less. A few of my siblings lowered their heads, shame clouding their eyes. My father gave me a subtle nod of approval, his silent acknowledgement enough to remind me that I was not as alone as I once thought. I gathered my things, my hand brushing against the table one last time. That table had been the anchor of countless memories, but tonight it had borne witness to my liberation. As I walked toward the door, the room seemed to shrink behind me. Emily's sobs grew faint, David's pleading turned to silence, and the weight of betrayal that had once crushed me slipped from my shoulders. I stepped into the cool night air, the wind brushing against my face like a cleansing touch. The stars above shimmered, distant yet unwavering, and I realized that I too could shine again unbroken, untainted, and free. The house behind me would carry the scars of this night, the echoes of lies and betrayal etched into its walls. But I carried something else with Memi dignity, my strength, and the unshakable knowledge that I had survived the worst and emerged stronger. The story had ended for them in disgrace. But for me, it was the beginning of something new, something powerful. And as I walked away, leaving the shattered pieces of betrayal behind, I knew this truth. They could never take from me what mattered most. My spirit, my freedom, my future.